in my book, Why I'm Not a Christian.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Proselytize or Apostatize. I'm your host, David Russell, along with my co host, Caleb Jackson. What's up, Caleb?
Nice to be here, David. Thank you so much. Yeah, so for our viewers, we organized this. We were going to have a special guest on, but unfortunately, due to scheduling conflicts, we had to keep pushing it back, and they were not able to make it. So it's just going to be the two of us today doing a video response, as always. So that's going to be looking forward to it.
Yeah, man, it's going to be fun, man. So what's going on with you, Caleb? I mean, you're on a missions trip. You're,
Yeah.
uh, preaching the gospel, having the mind of Christ, even though you're a heretic, and you're leading people down the wrong way. So I don't get it, man. But no,
Oh,
seriously,
no,
tell us
no.
what you're doing, man. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so when I'm not being a heretic, I'm actually in Ocean City, New Jersey right now. I don't know if you can see the shirt I'm wearing. And we are basically doing evangelism on the boardwalk and on the beach. This is not like megaphone street preaching. It's more going up to people who are just kind of vacationing
I'm losing you,
and
bud.
asking 5 questions, and then we use those questions kind of to transition to the gospel. Yeah, so that's great. It's really rainy today, so we haven't gotten to do it today. But in between that, we have sessions and worship things and stuff like that. So it's been really fun and very enlightening.
So it's like a retreat where you go out and witness, but you get to stay at the beach. Man,
Yeah,
I'm gonna
something
have to
like
like
that.
go to our
That's
missionaries guys and be like, "Hey, man, we need to do some beach missionary stuff, for like the whole summer."
yeah. I've done this in Florida too, so it's okay. But yeah, missionary stuff is fun. But no, it really is. We haven't actually gotten to like go to like swim and stuff yet because we've been mostly focusing on this. So we'll get from beach days here and there, but we have 2 months here, so okay, so plenty of time to do stuff.
Right on. Well, everybody, I've got the first proselytize or apostatize shirt on. This is the first one that has ever been made. So I'm excited about it. We've got our design. We've got my wife. I bought her a circuit, and this is how she was able to make it. So we have that, and we're gonna start producing some of these shirts. So if you want one, let me know, and I will put an order in, and we will get on that. But we still have to buy the press. So this is just like the prototype. So we got a little bit of time, but let me know if you want one. I will send you one. I think it looks great. It looks really cool, and yeah, so it almost inspires me to keep the logo the way it is. What do you think, Caleb?
Yeah, I was telling him before we started recording this that it's a shame that we might be changing the name because the merch looks so good. So I don't know. We're still thinking about this.
Well,
So
let's
who knows? It could say the same or whatever. We don't know.
we'll see how it looks after it goes through the wash a couple times too. So,
Yeah, that's
but
true.
yeah, so
Well,
we've got an exciting video here, and we're gonna go through it, and we're gonna do just like we do on PRA Raw. We are critiquing a video, and as you probably saw, as it jumped the gun, and I don't know how it did that because it's supposed to be off, and you're supposed to be able to see the entire claw marks for PRA Raw, but that's not what happened. But we're gonna go through a video Richard Carrier did a long time ago. Caleb brought it to me and he wanted to go through it. So, that's what I do. I put videos out there. So I'm winging it. Caleb's seen it before, so Caleb's got all the answers, even with his heresies. But we're gonna
yeah.
start playing it, and we're gonna listen, and we're gonna stop it when we want to, and we're gonna comment. So, Caleb, if you just want me to stop it, you can just say, "Hey, stop it here," or just say, "Hey, let's give a pause here and talk about this," or something. You know,
Sounds good.
indicate that you want it to stop, or just start
Okay.
talking over it and I'll stop it. Something. But anyways, guys,
Okay.
we are here doing this last minute, so that's why it's kind of crazy. But
Yeah.
uh,
Do we want to press real fast as to? I am assuming most of our audience probably knows who Richard Carrier is, but for those who don't, he is a historian who also he's a big blogger and an author. He's one of the few people who argues against the historicity of Jesus. This is not what the video is about, so it's more philosophical of attempts at least. But he's a very big, prominent atheist in the community up until fairly recently, and so that's kind of why I was interested in engaging in some of his material because he's fairly influential among internet infidels and stuff like that. I think he edits the secular web and some other things, so it's exciting to deal with that.
right on. It is, and we'll get started right away on that for you guys, so we're not boring you with our just rhetoric here. So, without further ado, Caleb, if you can't hear it, just tell me again. I think you'll be able to, though.
In my book, Why I'm Not a Christian, I basically outline and explain in detail 4 reasons why I'm not a Christian. And if those reasons were met in the way that I explain in the book, that I would become a Christian. But the evidence just doesn't pan out. And basically it comes down to God is silent, God is inert, we have the wrong evidence, and we have the wrong universe. And those are the 4 things, and I explain each one of them. The first is that God is silent. I mean, if God really cared about us and wanted us to believe the right things and go on the right path, he would tell all of us himself. He wouldn't need Christian missionaries to do it. And he would have been telling us as soon as we had language, right? As soon as we could understand. So we would have, from the first shaman 40,000 years ago in every culture everywhere, God's gospel would have been preached to them by God himself. He wouldn't need intermediaries.
Well, that's the first point. What do you got, Caleb?
Yeah, so someone who's on a mission trip, I can understand the whole sentiment of like, why does God need missionaries? Why doesn't he do it himself, right? And I think that this is basically just a rewriting of the divine hiddenness argument, is typically what it's called, the silence of God, right? Why doesn't God just appear in front of everybody, and it would be a lot more obvious and more consistent? And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One, I think that if it was that obvious, it would be harder to make free decisions to sin. After all, you don't imagine if your parents were with you 24/7 every day, you wouldn't be able to do some of the things you perhaps would want to do when they weren't there. So you wouldn't really have integrity. Another thing I think would be the case is that there's a whole point of the joy of seeking in the fact that I think having people take responsibility and go out and learn about the world is more exciting than just giving them everything. So instead of telling them everything, having them go and learn for themselves and discover it, and having other people get that opportunity to do good things like sharing the gospel, I think just allows us to grow as people. And it would coddle us and kind of spoil us if we were just handed it to us without that kind of work. So that's my my first impression.
Yeah, okay, so there's several things here that they're kind of like my pet peeves. First off, you know, who's to say God is hidden? Who's to say that?
Right. Yeah.
Who's to say that God is silent? By all means, I mean, where's Christ? I mean, where does he fit into this? As a Christian, that's my first thought. Is who are you to say what God would do and what he should do, right? So why are you even making this? How would you even know? He might have a very good reason why he only reveals himself so much, right? Because we're talking about God. We're talking about a maximally great being that's very necessity sustains this planet. It also, I mean, at this point with our nature and our freedom, would we actually have a relationship with a God that was just like right in front of us all the time? Like you said, would we end up disliking him because he's lording over us even more? And not only that, would we actually get into a relationship with him based off of who he is, right? So what he could do for us, right? Would we buddy up to him to basically use him at that point? Because if you think about it, like, let's say Bill Gates dates this girl, right? And at this point, he's got to wonder, is she dating me because of the money? Those things do change
Right. Yeah.
genuine relationships. They do affect them in some way, shape, or form. So my whole thought is like, why should God reveal himself in a way where, it would take away from building a natural relationship with him, or a relationship that we could facilitate better. And I don't think Carrier's in a position to know the effects of that. So it brings me back to this whole idea, what he said at first. I would be a Christian if these evidences were here. I don't think he would be. I would have to question his volition. Because
Can I
I
say
think,
something?
let me finish. I just think,
Okay.
I'm almost done. So, like, I think that this volitional, I think the volitional argument carries a lot of weight. So I think that there is enough evidence for God And even if the evidence was exactly the way you wanted, I don't think you would be a Christian. So, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And so because I had some prep for this, I went out and I looked, and this is I found this when I was doing my prior book, but it's funny because Carrier does say that like he's acting like he's sincere, and if God did this, then I would repent. But I have a quote from him during one of his conferences about Christianity, and he says, among other things about the Christian God, that he is a moral monster, a douchebag, an a-hole, a jerk, a something head, and quote, not the kind of God you would respect or worship, and that there's no possible way that God could create the universe and still be considered perfectly good. So if you're going to say all of that, I don't know if you can say he's sincere and wanting to be in a relationship with God, even if he did know that God was there in front of him. So
Right, exactly. All right, shall we move on, my friend?
I think we should.
And so we would be able to confirm that, yes, there's this guy somewhere who is giving us all the same information. And so we would know what that information is. And we would still have the freedom to reject that message or not care about it or whatever, but we would all agree on what the message was. There wouldn't be disagreements on it. And every little thing that we'd be able to ask him questions, like say, so what is your position on abortion, right? And he would give us all the same answer. And so we could confirm, yeah, this God guy, that's what he said, you're right. So if there was a God like that, and certainly
Here's another area where I have to I've got to pipe up because there's this notion that because Christians can't agree on things, that somehow we're divided and that's, not something God wants, right? But if you take in the whole of our theology, you should expect what you see, right? So we should disagree. And don't act like the atheist's standard is any better because if they're going off of like science or whatever, every scientist has a different viewpoint, So we agree on about 90% of everything when it comes to Christian and orthodoxy. Yeah, there are some people that disagree, and there just like there are scientists that disagree on certain theories. You know, that's that's the product of people that have a real freedom that express that real freedom in different ways, right?
Yeah, and I think for me personally, and this would relate to this channel as well, is that kind of disagreement is, I think, why we got interested in apologetics and theology in the first place. If God laid it out so perfectly clear that there's no room for debate, we wouldn't really even need this channel. I mean, we have plenty of debates on theology and stuff because it's interesting and it's fascinating and gets us excited to have these conversations. But if it was so point blank that we wouldn't even need to talk about it, then I don't think I would even be here right now. So the fact that there is disagreement, like we're having disagreement with Dr. Carrier here, I think only invigorates that. It makes me more excited and more passionate to want to go and learn more instead of just being told everything and saying, okay, well, why should I care at that point? So I think just it's the seeking of knowledge that makes it exciting and that makes people more invested in my experience.
Yeah, and I've always said this, humans are at their best when they're on a road to discovery. When they're traveling that road to discovery, so it's just part of the human experience. And I think that there's several reasons why the world is the way it is, why God set it up the way it is. And I don't think, like you said, it would be boring if we had all the answers. It would be boring if there wasn't any room to learn. I mean, how can we get finite creatures to have infinite knowledge anyway? I don't think it's possible. But with that said, I just had to point that out because it's just this own perceptual mischaracterization of what the world actually is to me. So, anyways, let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on.
if I were in a position of a deity like that, I would feel that it would be profoundly immoral of me to not communicate with my subjects, to let them know the things they need to know, be there for them to answer their questions, and so on if they asked. The fact that God doesn't do that, there's no communications from God, no reliable, consistent communications. There's people who claim to talk to God, but everybody who does that gets different messages. So we're clearly not dealing with a consistent, caring deity in that respect. So the silence of God is a big problem. The other is that God is inert. He doesn't do anything. And it's not that he doesn't do any specific thing. You could pick any particular thing you think God should do and give an excuse to why he wouldn't do that. But he doesn't do anything. The odds that he would do nothing whatsoever. I mean, if he did at least some things consistently, we could debate about whether he cared about us, or we could debate about how powerful he was or anything, but we would all agree that he existed and that he was interfering in the world in certain ways. We might even be able to talk about how he's helping us and things like that.
What about all the miracles that everybody constantly tells
Yeah.
me that they prayed for something and
Sure.
then it happened?
Well, yeah, when those things happen, the praying for something, that's a correlation fallacy. Correlation is not causation. Lucky things happen to everybody, right? And some of those things are going to inevitably happen. To give.
All right, Caleb, what do you got?
Actually, I was going to wait for it to go a bit longer because I was going to chime in at a more specific point. So I'll tell you when we can cut it off. Just want to go a bit longer so we don't.
Give you an example. If let's say it's something that's 1,000,000 to 1 odds against it happening, 1,000,000 to 1 odds against it happening like soon after you prayed for it. Well, there's 300 million people in the U.S. alone, so that means that those events, just by chance alone, are going to occur to 300 people a year, right? So that's a lot of people. So you could find 300 witnesses that say, yeah, 1,000,000 to 1 odds, I prayed for it and it happened. Yeah, statistically, that we know that's going to happen anyway, even if there's no God, right? So when people understand stats and statistics and math, then those kinds of claims go away. And
So you think if people are kind of ignoring the times when they pray and it doesn't happen?
That's another issue. And then, of course, there's also claims that are ridiculous. And then when we go investigate them, they turn out to not pan out. That's why when you hear these, like, oh, there's these miracles, this resurrection and all this stuff that I heard about, yeah, you have to go like into the jungles of Africa to go find these claims, exactly where scientists can't really check them, where there isn't documentation, where there aren't doctors and so forth to confirm that there's no hijinks going on. The fact that you have to go to places where you can't check the facts, and those are the only places you ever find these miracle claims, that's suspect right there.
Okay, stop it there.
All right.
Okay, so as someone who's currently doing a book on miracles, a quite long one, there's so much in here that is just wrong, that's just kind of sad to see that I think he's misinformed. For one, I think that his statement is just not true, that nobody makes claims like this outside of the third world. Actually, they did a poll several years back, and it was, I believe, 55% of American doctors, these are American doctors, believe that they have personally witnessed healings that they would consider to be medically inexplicable and miraculous, and 75% of those doctors believe that that's possible. So this idea that, oh, this only happens when you can't investigate them is so wrong and not true. And even more so, you actually have peer-reviewed articles of stuff like this happening, of people, I can think of two off the top of my head of people who were prayed for and instantly healed of incurable diseases, and these are published in medical journals that are available. Maybe we can link them in the description when this comes out, I don't know. But for him to say something so blatantly wrong is just kind of sad that I think he just hasn't looked into it. Actually, in fact, most of the ones I have in my book are from the West just because the documentation is better. Now, for his second point, it is true that these are a little bit more common in the third world because more sick people live there, right? If God was going to heal blind people, I believe around 80% of the blind people on Earth live in third world countries because the medicine's just not as good. Where would you expect most of the healings to take place? You'd expect to be there. But this also kind of reflects this same idea that David Hume had several hundred years ago of miracle claims only come from ignorant and barbarous nations. And when Hume said it, it certainly had racist context. And while I don't think Carrier's intentionally doing that here, I think that we do still sometimes have this idea of Western superiority that, oh, well, in Africa, they're superstitious and they just don't know that people don't rise from the dead, right? And I think that's just such a very ethnocentric way to look at it. It's very condescending to think that people are just stupid in that region, they don't know any better, and that they're just more gullible. So you really just, I think that there's several things wrong with what he was saying.
Yeah, I'm glad you covered the miracles part because I wasn't going to get into that. I wanted to tackle the first part of what he said. But, I don't think he's in a position to judge whether it's luck or not. You know what I mean?
It's unfalsifiable. We can't prove it either way.
I don't think that correlation does imply causation. I agree with him there. But let's back up to his statement on God doesn't do anything. He's inert.
That's quite broad. Yeah, he's like, he doesn't do anything, really? Like
he's not consistent. We don't have laws that are consistent in nature. Wow. I mean, if God exists and he created this world and he set up all these consistent things, I would think he's pretty consistent, right?
But then why are you against miracles, right? If there's no consistency, then miracles wouldn't be that uncommon. They would be, like there's no laws of nature. Of course that can happen. But the fact that you're saying miracles are ridiculous because we know this can't happen automatically implies consistency. So I feel like he's kind of just contradicting himself here.
Yeah,
Pick one.
big time. I was blown away when he was like, God's inert, but then he starts talking about like him not being consistent, and I'm thinking just like, okay, we've got these natural laws, we've got this natural theology, I think is, and this teleology that just looks as God's hand is in it, and I think that God's hand is in people's lives as well, right? So I think that even if you think God told you something, and it's different than what he told someone else, I mean, that could be a possibility. Maybe it applies in their different situation, right? So, I mean, it's way too broad. And like you said, I think it's really contradictory. So, yeah, I just wanted to address that aspect. But
Yeah, well, he's going to get into, if you want to get to the next part, he's going to get into more like problem of evil and the Odyssey stuff here if you want. But I'll wait for it to play. Before you want to, I'm sure you have stuff to say about that.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Here we go.
What I'm talking about are more direct things. So, for example, these mass shootings, for example, the recent one where a guy goes in and basically murders 20, 30 kids. Why would God let that happen? That's pointless. You certainly, at the very least, he could stop the guy and say, hey, let's have a conversation. If the guy's insane, God could cure his illness and say, okay, problem solved. And if even despite all that, the guy still insists on going, he could turn the bullets into popcorn and say, sorry, I'm not letting you do that. There's lots of things that God could do. And I talk about how, for example, how our friends, how our fathers, our mothers, people we know who care about us, what they do for us when we need help, when we ask for help. God doesn't do any of that. He doesn't act like a caring parent. He doesn't act like a caring friend. He doesn't engage with us in the world. He doesn't do anything to right injustices or any of the things that we would expect a
So you're
moral,
saying that
caring person would do.
if I notice in your book too, you used an example of if you had the power to intervene to stop somebody being kidnapped or tortured or whatever and didn't do anything, how would people judge you?
Yeah, and it's not just how would I judge myself? I mean, I would feel awful about myself. Why would I do something? Why would I be so insensitive to that? And people will come up with apologetical answers to that, but I also address those in the book. And generally, the immediate rationalization is that, well, God can't stop everything because then the world would be boring. It's like, yeah, but you don't need women's breasts being chopped off in the Congo for the world for there to be struggle and things that we need to learn. We don't need these horrific things happening. We don't need to have mass shooters murdering dozens of kids. We don't need those things. It's not like if we got rid of those things, the world would be boring. So these kinds of arguments, you really need to use your imagination and think them through. And I think a problem I often run into with Christians is they either don't have a good imagination or they aren't using it. Because if you really used your imagination, you could imagine and envision a world that's just as exciting and has learning struggles and all of the things we would need for a good life without the horrific injustices that pervade the world. And obviously they must exist. If you think you're going to heaven and heaven is going to be any better than this place, are there mass shootings in heaven? So is heaven going to be boring? Is that going to be an awful place to live? So you got to really reason this through. If heaven's going to be a great place to live, then there's a better world we could make of this world, and many other points I make in the book. So that the God is a nerd and God.
All right, man. I'll let you go first.
I'll let you take that.
No, you go first. You go first.
Okay. Well, I'll respond to the second part, but I'll let you kind of join in when you want. So I actually talked about this in my Theodicy book about is there free will in heaven and why not that stuff. And the idea that I come to is that I think it's something. The technical term is called proximate compatibilism, but I think it's the idea that our freedom is in hindsight, right? So if we were just made heaven originally, we wouldn't have as much freedom and stuff. So the idea is that we are free in heaven then because we have the memories from earth and we learned our moral lessons and built our characters while on earth that follow through into heaven. But so no, you don't. That doesn't mean that you can't have free will in heaven. It's just free will. It's in hindsight. It's like the prodigal son, where he's at his father's house and he leaves and he realizes how miserable he is without it, and he goes back to his father's house. Well, does he not have freedom once he returns back? No, he does, but he realizes how much he doesn't experience all of that. So I think that's the point. And the other thing is that I was confused is he talked about being boring. I don't know anyone who says that it would be boring. I don't think that's the reason they give. What they give is soul making, right? The idea that it builds our character. It's not that it would just be boring. It's that we would be spoiled and we would be worse off because of this ability to be better people. We wouldn't be able to experience forgiveness and love. It would all just be handed to us. And if it's handed to us, then we're not responsible for it. We would essentially just be robots that are programmed to be happy. And so the idea that we get to learn and develop over time, it makes us more accountable. It means we earned it. in that sense instead of just being handed to us. But yeah, I think one example I could think of, he's talking about like we don't need this bad of a thing. Well, first of all, I don't think we can say what the limit is, how bad it. I mean, certainly we can be in a much worse world, even if this world has a lot of evils. I can imagine an even worse. But there are things that you couldn't get if we lived in a pretty easy world. Like, I don't know if you know Corrie ten Boom, but she was a Christian Jew during the Holocaust. She was thrown in a concentration camp. Her sister was abused and murdered in the camp. But she eventually got out, and years later she met at her church one of the Nazi officers who had become a Christian since then. And she ended up having to forgive him, and it was hard. But that example shows to say that if she had not gone through all of that, she wouldn't have been able to learn this even greater idea of forgiveness, right? If we lived in a world where the worst thing that would happen is your coworker ate your lunch, you wouldn't be able to show a lot of moral goodness. It'd be a pretty weak world morally. So sometimes in order to get the best goods in the world, you have to get complement them with evils and have them respond to it. So that's just what I would say.
You have to experience consequences to your choices, and the worse your choice is, the worse the consequence, right? So like if you do something crazy because of the freedom you've been given, because to have freedom you actually have to have something real to choose between, right? You're going to have the worst consequence. So if God was to be like Richard Carrier wants him to be, we'd be in a world of unscripted enslavement. I mean, that's just what it would be. So I think it's really funny that he talks about imagination here, right? And how Christians aren't using their imagination, right? But isn't that really what we're doing on his worldview anyway? Is we're imagining a God, and we're imagining all this good stuff. We're imagining all this morality and stuff like that. Because at the end of the day, on his view, I mean, there is actually no objective morality. There's no grand scheme. There is no ultimate purpose. So where does he get the gumption to come off like this towards us? That we have to reason our way through this. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to reason why there's evil in the first place, right? What happened, And we have an explanation as far as Christians go. We have a God that lines up philosophically correct when it comes to having a world with freedom in it. Okay, if freedom is here, and we went wrong somewhere, then there's the reason for evil, right? Moral evil and so forth, we chose to be our own gods, so we are the kings of our own castle, and so we're going to have people that there's the possibility that something goes wrong and they end up having a mass shooting, right? So those are real consequences to real choices. So, yeah, and to say that there's no vindication and stuff like that, I mean, that's assuming too much, right? You don't know what's happening on the other side of eternity. If God is real and he said, I am going to judge this wickedness and I am going to take care of it, yeah, I think that there is going to be this ultimate vindication, right? And evil will be destroyed. But I think with you, what you said, I think you said something really good there, and I agree with you, is that our sin will be high in sight. Our freedom will be high in sight once we're in heaven. Yeah, we have free will in heaven. That was one of the, when I responded to that video yesterday, that was the first question she asked me, if there's free will in heaven. And I said, yeah, Satan had it. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, so if you think about it, I mean, the angels had the choice and they rebelled, so yeah, I hear you, but I think once we go through this and we experience the consequences of our choices, we experience it's like the prodigal son, man. We're never going to go back. So, but
yeah,
anyways.
I forgot who it was. You had on the show a couple episodes ago of the what it was his name, different views of free will in respect to heaven and transworld depravity and all that stuff. So if people want to check out that episode, more on that. Cool. Yeah, it was. And to the last point when he talks about God could turn the bullets into popcorn. Well, we were talking about earlier about the consistency. I think it's Richard Swinburne who pointed out that if God intervened every time, then you really wouldn't have free will, because the whole point of someone wanting to kill someone is because they know that if they shoot a gun, the bullet is going to go through and kill the person, right? The reason why, if I give you a high five versus smacking in the face, I know from prior experience, based on the laws of nature, that if I high-five you, it's not going to hurt you. If I smack you in the face, it will. So if someone, every time they try to shoot someone, it turned into popcorn or something, then people would find another way to hurt it, because we would know we wouldn't have the freedom. Freedom requires that you take responsibility for your actions, and if there's no consistent laws of nature, you your actions. So if if you didn't know what was happening prior to God, you would be responsible for it.
Yeah, there's so many flaws in his reasoning, as he's, telling us we're not doing, that there's so many flaws in his that, I mean, like I said, at the end of the day, I think he would be justifying a world of unscripted enslavement. I mean, I don't know, man. There's no better way to say it.
The silent, those are big
battles. We can move on from there.
The Christian thesis that God cares about us doesn't hold up in the face of that evidence. And the other is the wrong evidence. We just don't have the kind of evidence we would need to confirm this. The kind of evidence we have is the same kind of evidence we have for all other religions and all other myths and so on. If there was a real God, he would give us much better evidence than that, and it would be the Christian God especially who could give us really good evidence where it was clear. And then the thing that people find surprising, I guess, is that's the only reason, point he has. It's the wrong universe. This isn't the universe.
What's that?
So I said, so that's all he had to say for the third point. So he was way too broad there to dissect enough here. His third point was just that we don't have enough evidence, and the evidence for Christianity is no better than any other religion. And I would just say that I don't think that's true at all. First of all, I think he's just ignoring a lot of the evidence other people present. And secondly, I don't think that's true at all. And in the current work I'm doing right now, it's actually part of my thesis. In fact, I actually quote Carrier saying that he was saying, why didn't Jesus appear to everybody at the resurrection? Why didn't he appear to people who didn't know him? And I have a whole chapter on Jesus appearing to Muslims and Hindus and Buddhists, many of which have never even heard of Christianity and having them convert. And so I kind of set up every criteria he once met, show how that's met, show how it's consistent. They're all consistent as well, by the way. Very consistent throughout all these cultures and stuff. And yet I still bet that probably wouldn't have an intrinsic effect on that. So I think that he just either ignores evidence or doesn't want to do it. And again, I don't think it's analogous to every other religion, because you don't have phenomenon like that in every religion. In fact, Christianity is the only religion, it's not the only religion that has miracle claims, but it is the only religion that can say that the majority of its converts in the third world are because of miracles. So even if miracles happen in other religions, they're not converting people in large numbers. But Craig Keener does a good job of showing how miracles, and especially the third world, are huge in evangelism. That's actually, even J.P. Moreland estimated that it was about 70% of church growth was attributed to signs and wonders in that sense. So yeah, I don't think you can compare that to other religions, but that's just where I would end that point there.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think there's plenty of evidence, and with all the evidence in your face, and you're just able to construct a mythicist web out of what the majority consensus holds. And I'm not trying to appeal to an ad populum fallacy, but I mean, these are established things, that have been around, and that historians have held to for thousands of years, not just 100 years, but thousands, that Jesus doesn't exist. I mean, diving into the mythicist movement like that, and being a mythicist, and not going with what most of your colleagues are telling you, hey, this guy did exist. It tells me there's something a lot deeper going on, and I know the mythicists, they'll bash us and whatever, and they'll try to bring their little arguments, but all it is an intricate web of exaggeration, or what is it, misrepresenting the evidence, like his whole idea of the ascension of Isaiah, and that Jesus died in the heavenly realms. I mean, are you kidding me? Really?
Yeah, the way he reads Paul, he tries to read that into Paul, and it's just like, when you read Paul, you're like, I don't see that at all. Like, to give you just one of the most extreme examples of how how much he has to try this, he when you have the Romans 1 verse of saying Jesus was the seed of David, he was a descendant of David, that seems to imply that he was a descendant of David. That seems pretty straightforward. Carrier takes that and says, well, what Paul means here is that Paul thinks that, and he tries to pull to a verse in 1st or 2nd Samuel, Paul was saying that God took the literal semen of David, crafted Jesus in the heavens, and then executed him in the heavenly realms. And that's what Paul means when he says seed of David. He doesn't mean an actual descendant of David, because, that's the obvious reading of it. So no, we have this idea of a celestial sperm bank in his words. So that kind of exegesis, I think, is just so contrived that it just it's hard to take
And
seriously.
his dismissal of like Josephus and the brother of the Lord James, I mean, that's
Yeah.
just it's not correct. And amateur historians have jumped on him about this and have written entire blog articles saying there's just no way,
Tim O'Neill.
yeah, that
And
that
Tim
this
O'Neill's
is it.
an atheist too. He's
Yeah,
not even a Christian.
it's like you're out on a limb, man, and there's obviously something deeper going on in your mind and in your heart, and that's just my opinion. But
Yeah.
All
right, we can move on.
Make. It's exactly the universe we would have if there was no God, which is people be able to say, what? How is that possible? But if you think about it, just for example, I talk about many other examples in the book, but just as one of the examples, if there is no God, and let's just use our imaginations for a moment, if there is no God, but we did come to exist, that somehow, some non-God way, the universe came to exist and we came to exist, what universe would we see in that case? Now, we know that we've evolved for billions of years from single-celled organisms. We can confirm that extensively scientifically. And the single-celled organisms, the earliest, simplest versions of them, had to have been a chemical accident. There had to be like the chemicals just randomly came together and just happened to produce a self-replicator. And we know that that's very improbable, right? So that kind of thing is not just going to happen every day. So the only way it could happen without a God doing it, without an intelligent engineer doing it, is if there were tons and tons of trials. It's like winning a lottery. Like if the winning lottery may be 1 in a million chance, that's really low. But if 1 million people play, the probability that someone's going to win the lottery is high. In fact, it's very high. And so what we would expect is we would have to see a vast universe, a universe that's really old, with tons of planets and stars that has been experimenting with chemistry on vast scales for vast periods of time. That's the only universe that would randomly kick up life. That's the only kind of universe that would randomly kick up life. So the universe we would expect to see if there was no God is a universe that's vastly old, vastly large, and filled with vast quantities of stuff. And that's exactly the universe we see. There's billions of galaxies, billions of planets. The universe has been around for billions of years, and it's billions of light years across. And so
you can stop
that's an example
there.
of the kind.
all right, what you got, bud?
All right, I think we can maybe, I don't know if that's where you want to stop, because I think he just reiterates some of the stuff in the video later. But yeah, I think that I kind of wish Travis Worth was here, because I know he does a lot on the fine-tuning and the science behind it, or Faz Rana, because I know from reasons to believe with the DNA, because I'm not an expert on intelligent design, so I can't really comment on that particular element. I do think that's kind of funny how he appeals to this idea, because when he says a universe without a God, that just makes me think of there wouldn't be a universe at all, right? So I think that he's automatically presupposing of like, why would we even predict that a universe would exist at all? And Carrier actually does think that something can come from literal nothingness, because he has a very interesting argument that we did a whole video on, which is pretty funny. But essentially, I think that this is just a very flawed methodology, because he's talking, well, if you get chemistry experimenting long enough, you're going to get this. Well, yeah, but the thing is, in order for even chemistry to exist, you have to have extraordinarily fine-tuned constants and laws of physics, right? The more likely, if the universe even did exist, there would be no stars and barely anything besides hydrogen atoms at all, hydrogen and helium atoms at all. So you wouldn't even be able to get this idea of experimentation. It's kind of like compared to the lottery and says, well, you have enough people playing the lottery, fine, but you have to have lottery tickets in order to play the lottery. So we're talking about, why are there even lottery tickets in the first place? Why is the ink in the way that it is? Why are the numbers? Why is why is the system there for people to go and pay for it? So you have to have all these other prerequisites for the lottery to even take place. So even using his own analogy, I don't think that's a very good one, because under naturalism, we shouldn't expect any of these laws or fine-tuning to happen. And Luke Barnes actually pointed this out to Carrier, and then Carrier had to take down a whole blog post because he misunderstood the fine-tuning argument. So, but that's just what I would say to that.
Do you think that this video was made before that?
It may have been. This is a pretty old
video,
to be fair. But he still has it in his book though, so I don't know. He's still.
You're not going to read
I don't think
a book probably.
Right.
That.
I don't know.
Either does,
knowing Carrier's personality, I don't see that happening. But we'll find out. But yeah, that's just. I don't know if you had any comments on that, but
I think you said it well, man. When you're talking about the lottery, I was going to go down that same route, So I think you just said it perfectly. He doesn't understand the fine tuning argument in the least. He doesn't understand the philosophy of it. So I don't know why he's even trying to speak on these things. I guess he just thinks he knows them, which is it. Just he doesn't. He doesn't understand the argument. So he's not a scientist. He should stick to history.
Even then, he's quite a French historian
Very
from
French.
what
Very
I was say.
French.
So maybe not even that. But
Is this the end of the
when
video?
one more thing,
Or
pretty. I don't think he says anything besides reiterate the other one. So we can stop the video there. Oh shoot! Did I forget what I was going to say? But yeah, I think when it comes to the fine tuning, he definitely seems to have a misunderstanding as to the science, and it's just quite interesting to see how that plays out. But yeah, I think that overall, if we're going to take a general assessment of Dr. Carrier's today, I don't find them overly persuasive, and watching this to me made me think if this is the best arguments that can be given against it, that I think we're on fairly good grounds. It makes me feel more confident in that sense. But yeah, I wanted to do this because I know he's influential in the community, and he's quite both online blogging and in his books,
yeah,
and so I think it's important to deal with that. But I bet when we look at his arguments in particular, they're not overly persuasive. So
not at
I would
all.
just end it with that on my part.
Absolutely. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode of PRA Raw. We did a critique here. If you missed any of it, just go back. And if you want to see more videos like this, just hit the subscribe button. We love to do these type of things. We, primarily a debate channel, so we get debaters on here and stuff. But we also do critiques and interviews and stuff like that. So, again, this month is closing out. I haven't got any emails for logos or anything. So if you want to email me of your ideas and stuff like that, I'll mail you out a shirt when I get some. If whoever wins, whoever has the best logo, I'll send you some stuff. So, anyways, that's about it for us today on PRA Raw. This is David and Caleb signing off. Have a good day.